Producing weapons, supplies, or vehicles you want to use or deliver later, you can store them in a reserve or personal stockpile at a storage depot or seaport. To make one, simply drive up to a depot or seaport until you see in the bottom left, press E to open seaport. You press E to open the stockpile menu of the depot. In the Actions panel, click the large plus button. This will bring up a window that asks you to name the reserve stockpile. Type in a memorable name and click the Submit button to confirm the name. We now see in the top right that our reserve stockpile is made and selected. In the bottom middle, we can also see the name of the stockpile we have selected and the owner, Freerk. On the right-hand side, we see the expiry timer for our currently selected stockpile, 2 days and 1 hour. In the bottom middle, we find buttons that are specific to our reserve stockpile. The first button, Release Reserve Stockpile, will, as the name suggests, release the contents of the stockpile into the public stockpile and remove the stockpile entirely from the stockpile list. The Make Reserve Stockpile Visible button will make the name and contents of this stockpile visible to anyone that opens the depot. They will also be able to transfer items into the stockpile, but not transfer items out of the stockpile after it has been made visible. The View Passcode button will show the passcode that allows access to this specific stockpile just below the expiry timer in the right. It will only be visible for a short period of time, after which the button has to be pressed again. Or, using the Copy Passcode button, we will copy the passcode to our clipboard so we can easily paste it, Ctrl V, to give somebody else access to our stockpile. The Reset Passcode button will reset the passcode for the selected stockpile, revoke access from all people that had the passcode, and will also make the stockpile invisible to the public. In the Actions panel, we can also find the buttons that will show us the action logs for the public stockpile and one specific for the currently selected reserve stockpile. If you click those, you will get a list of all submissions, transfers, and retrievals that took place in that stockpile. To store crates of supplies that you produced into the personal stockpile, you simply open the depot's menu, use the drop-down list to select your reserve stockpile, and then right-click on the crates in your inventory. Select Submit to Stockpile. This will bring up a message where you can set how many crates of that particular supply you want to put into the stockpile. If we choose 5 and click Submit, this will submit 5 out of the 10 ammo crates into the stockpile. If we want to submit all the crates with the different supplies into the stockpile, we can right-click any of the crates and select Submit All to Stockpile. Materials from the refinery, like BMATs, EMATs, and gravel, can also be stored inside the personal stockpile, but only when they are crated. If we come to the refinery, open the menu, and simply left-click on the BMATs icon in the refinement panel, we retrieve the basic materials as stacks, not crates. We can crate these at the seaport or storage depot, but not store them in our personal stockpile, only the public stockpile. We drive to the seaport and open its menu. We select our stockpile, right-click one of the BMAT stacks and select Pack Material Crates, which will turn all of our BMAT stacks into crates. If we hover over the crates, we see no line saying reservable in the drop-down. And if we try to submit it into our reserve stockpile, it will tell us 1 or more items not reservable. Selecting the public stockpile, we can store them there by right-clicking and submitting them. Returning to the refinery, we open the menu again. Then, if we go to the refinement panel and right-click the basic material icon, we get a drop-down menu. We choose Retrieve as Crates, and we see that pulled 15 crates of BMATs into our truck's inventory. If we hover over the crates, we can see that these are reservable. We drive with the crate to the seaport, select our stockpile, right-click the crates, and choose Submit All to Stockpile. This submits all crates into our personal stockpile. All materials made in the refinery can be retrieved as crates, but they all have different crate sizes. Hovering over the icons of the materials in the refinement panel will tell us how many materials are needed to make one crate. Remember that only materials that are retrieved as crates from the refinery can be stored in the reserve stockpile. Materials produced in facilities can be crated and stored as well. Here the same thing applies. Only materials retrieved as crates from the production panel can be stored in a personal stockpile. So, if we right-click the Assembly Materials 2 icon in the production menu and select Retrieve as Crates, and we hover over the crates it created, we see that it says Reservable. Going to the seaport, selecting our stockpile, right-clicking the crates, and choosing Submit All to Stockpile, we see that this stored the 5 reservable crates. If we now crate the loose assembly materials by right-clicking them and selecting Crate Materials, and then try to store these, we see that these are not reservable and can only be stored into the public stockpile. Vehicles made in the garage can be stored in our reserve stockpile as well. If we open the vehicle menu after we made it, we see in the header of the inventory tab a small orange lock icon which tells us, if we hover over it, that this means the vehicle is reservable in a storage depot or seaport. To do this, we simply drive to the seaport, press E to open the seaport menu, select our personal stockpile in the drop-down, and then in the Actions panel we select the Submit Vehicle button. If we did not make the vehicle ourselves, but pulled it from Public Stockpile, we can see that it does not have the little orange lock icon in its inventory header. So, if we try to submit this into our reserve stockpile, we can see that one or more items are not reservable. We can, however, put it back into the Public Stockpile. To pull a vehicle from your personal stockpile, we come to the depot and open the menu. Open the Vehicle tab in the depot and click the vehicle we want to retrieve. Make sure one of the loading pads is empty or you will get an error. After we assemble the vehicle, we hop into the driver's side and drive it off of the loading pad first. If we then open the vehicle menu, we can see in the header the orange lock icon indicating we can store it back into our reserve stockpile. And in the fuel panel, we can see that it comes with a tiny bit of starting fuel, 5 liters of diesel. Vehicle variants can also be stored. If, for instance, we turn an ambulance into a fire truck and open its menu, we see that it also has an orange lock icon in its inventory header. Bringing it to the seaport, selecting our reserve stockpile, and clicking the Submit Vehicle button will store it in our personal stockpile. Upgraded vehicles cannot be stored in a personal stockpile. If we, for instance, bring a truck to a field modification center and upgrade it to Tier 2, drive it to the seaport, and open its menu, we can see the Veterancy icon in the header, but no orange lock. If we try to submit it into our reserve stockpile, we see that it is not reservable. And if we then try to submit it into the public stockpile, we see that we cannot store it at all. Vehicle crates, as produced in a mass production factory, or MPF, can also be stashed inside a personal stockpile. Take a flatbed to the MPF, open its menu and click the green check mark behind our order of vehicle crates. This will place one crate of 3 trucks on the loading pad. If we walk up to it and press E to unpackage it and then press E to open its menu, we see in the header the orange lock icon indicating that this crate can be stored in a reserve stockpile. We package it again, climb in the crane and hoist it on the back of our flatbed. Drive to the storage depot, hop into the crane, hoist the crane off of the flatbed and onto the loading pad, which will open the depot menu. We select our personal stockpile in the drop-down menu, and in the Actions panel click the Submit Loading Area Equipment button. This will put the vehicle crate into our reserve stockpile, as we can see if we select the Vehicle Crate menu icon in the top of the stockpile. If we want to use one of the trucks from the crate, we have to unpack the crate first. For that, we right-click on the vehicle crate and select Unpack to Reserve Stockpile. This will unpack the 3 trucks and stores them in the vehicle category of our stockpile, as we can see if we select that. If we want, we can also unpack the crate into the public stockpile. For that, we right-click the crate and instead select Unpack to Public Stockpile. This will put the 3 trucks into the vehicle category of the public stockpile. When we have our reserve stockpile open, we can see in the stockpile panel the amount of time we have before our reservation on it expires. When this reaches 0, all contents of the personal stockpile will be released into the public stockpile. To reset the expiry timer, we can submit more supplies into it, or, way easier, simply click the Refresh Reserve Stockpile. Clicking the Refresh Reserve Stockpile button will reset the timers on all stockpiles you have access to. Submitting more supplies to an existing stockpile will only reset the timer for that particular stockpile. Just as the public stockpile, you can also check the contents of a personal stockpile on the map. For that, simply hover over the seaport or depot where your personal stockpile is located and press Tab to switch between public and the stockpiles you have access to. You are not limited to having one reserve stockpile in a depot. If we click the large plus button again after making one stockpile, we can see that we can make a second, and, if we want to, a third reserve stockpile as well. After making the third stockpile though, we see that the large plus button disappeared and we are not able to make a fourth. This is a restriction that only applies to a single depot though. You can have other reserve stockpiles in other storage depots and seaports around the world if you want to. For each supply, you can store a maximum of 100 crates in a personal stockpile. So, if we bring 9 crates of 7.62mm ammo crates to the seaport here and try to store all of them into our personal stockpile that already has 94 crates, we see that it will only store 6 crates. The remaining 3 will stay in my truck. Trying to store them will just give the message, stockpile is too full to do that. We can either make another stockpile in this depot to store them, or store the crates in the public stockpile. The maximum amount of stackable materials that we can store is 300 crates per type. The maximum amount of large item materials that we can store is 100 crates per type. The maximum amount of liquids we can store is 100 crates per type. The maximum amount of vehicles we can store is 10 per type. The maximum amount of vehicle crates we can store is also 10 per type. The maximum amount of shippables we can store is 10 per type. And the maximum amount of shippable crates we can store is also 10 per type. Word of note, storage depots do accept crates of water vehicles, but will not store them individually. If somebody makes a personal stockpile in a depot, it will not automatically be visible to everyone. So Archeon over here just made a reserve stockpile, but if I open a depot, I cannot see it in the drop-down menu. Now, if he clicks the Make Reserve Stockpile Visible button, I can see that another stockpile now shows up in the drop-down menu. If I select it, I can see what's inside it, but I am not able to retrieve anything from it since access not granted for this stockpile. If Archeon now uses the Copy Passcode button and then pastes, Ctrl-V, the copied passcode into local chat, I can use this code to get access to his stockpile. With the passcode remembered or written down, I open the Depots menu and click the Access Reserve Stockpile button. Type in the passcode I just got from Archeon and click Submit. If I now click one of the crates inside the stockpile, I can retrieve it into my inventory because I now have access. If he changes his mind and wants to revoke my access, he can click the Reset Password button. This will not only revoke my access to the stockpile, but also remove the stockpile from the publicly visible list as well. Besides storing vehicles and supplies for future use, there is another huge benefit to using personal stockpiles: the speed at which supplies are retrieved from a reserve stockpile into an inventory. If, for instance, I want to deliver a container full of basic rifles and 7.62mm ammunition, it will take a very long time to assemble the 60 crates from the public stockpile into the container. If I do this, however, from my reserve stockpile, we can see that the retrieval is near instant. To pull and fill a shipping container, we come to the depot and hop into the crane. We press E to open the depot's menu, and we select our personal stockpile. We select the shippable category, and here we click the icon of the shipping container, which will assemble it on the loading pad. When it is assembled, we see the inventory of the container pop up in the bottom left. To put supplies into our container, left-click to assemble one crate into the container, shift-click to assemble 3 crates into the container at once, and right-click the crate and select Retrieve Custom to assemble anywhere between 1 and 15 crates at a time. The number in the container header shows us the amount of crates that are in it and the amount it can store. The numbers under the crates show us how many crates are public and how many are reservable. When the container is full, we can click the Package Loading Area Equipment button in the Actions panel to package the container, hoist it on the back of our flatbed, and be on our way. It also allows for quick transfer of supplies between different stockpiles. If I want, for instance, to transfer some of the crates of lowcasters I have in my Memorable stockpile to my Memorable 2 stockpile, I can simply right-click on the lowcasters in the Memorable stockpile, select Transfer Item in the drop-down, select the destination stockpile in the drop-down, click Transfer, select the amount of crates I want to transfer, and then click Transfer once again to actually transfer the crates. If we now select the destination stockpile, Memorable 2, we see that we indeed did transfer those crates. We can also transfer crates to stockpiles we do not have access to, but that are publicly visible. So, if for instance I want to transfer crates of BMATs from my stockpile to the stockpile of FMAT, a stockpile I do not have access for but is publicly visible, I can simply right-click the BMATs in my stockpile, select Transfer Item, select the FMAT stockpile, click Transfer, select the amount, and click Transfer again. Opening the FMAT stockpile now, we see that they got the 100 crates of BMATs, and if we open the Reserve Stockpile Actions log, we can see my transfer on the top of the log. If we do not need a stockpile anymore, we can simply release it. To do this, simply click the Release Reserve Stockpile button in the Reserve Stockpile menu, and after confirming we want to do this, we can see that the stockpile is not in the drop-down menu anymore, and that the contents of the stockpile are now placed into the public stockpile. As per usual, a big thank you to Crowd9, to Archeon for helping with shooting some of the footage.